really is something sweet about a simple setup. And this day and age, it seems to get more and more cluttered and disoriented, and complicated, right? You go hiking and camping, bushcrafting, and all that fun stuff. You really don't need to make it as complicated and as fancy as you see on the Instagram and all that other shit. I find I have more enjoyable memories and experiences with a simpler setup because you're more focused on the actual event of what's going on and less about your gear. But it got me thinking about this person who brought up Nessmuk, which is a pen name. He wrote a book called Woodcraft Camping. And he talked about how simple and inexpensive his gear was because he wanted to focus on the experience. So it got me thinking. I wanted to put together and show my modern version of his simple concept. Right? And in his book, he goes over a few basic items. One is a knapsack and a diddy bag. So a diddy bag is a small bag in which carries your essential items on your person. It could have a crossbody strap, or in my case, with this one here, it's a belt. But it has a lot of extra space I can put on the outside of my coats or under a coat and whatnot. So in his book, knapsack for all your gear, diddy bag for the essential important stuff. Now in his book, he talks about his essential tools. Nessmuk, George W. Sears, that's his real name, talks in here in hatchet and knives. Now Nessmuk uses a double bit hatchet. Then he has his Nessmuk knife, and he has a multi-blade folding knife, pocket knife. And he goes over to talk about how his Nessmuk knife is used for preparing game, slicing vegetables, cooking. You can do a little bit of crafting with it, but its predominant use is processing game and making food. His second item, his folding knife, and that's one he uses for most crafting things. Will do all the hard bushcrafting work. But in order to get your bushcraft supplies, you need a hatchet. Now his is a double bit. Mine is a single bit. But we'll go into details here in a moment on what these are exactly and why I chose them. But that's what Nessmuk says is your knapsack, small backpack, diddy bag, hatchet, process knife, cutting tool for bushcraft. This is the classic Nessmuk setup. A affordable, reliable, and practical hatchet, a processing and slicing blade, and a multi-bladed pocket knife for all your crafting and carving needs. Alright guys, let's go over the gear specifically itself. So for the hatchet, I chose this Mora knife camp axe. It's definitely not your normal run-of-the-mill hatchet, but I've grown very, very fond of this one. It's very practical. I love the shape and design. It locks right in here. It's got a swell at the end, so this does not come out of your hands when swinging. Very, very effective and practical leather sheath. And it's got a Scandinavian grind. It's a round head. This, you can choke up on it, do your carving, your crafting, and come back down here, and it's got enough length on it so you can fell your trees and get your materials for building your shelters and fireplaces and whatnot. This hatchet, your hatchet, whatever one you're using, should be the tool that does the bulk of your work. Now, I'm personally getting a little tired of seeing these videos, these people taking their main bushcraft knife and using it for everything, batoning and carving and chunking and cutting out notches and grooves. Your bushcraft knife should be used for the small crafting things. We shouldn't have to be batoning your knife to cut down the trees and the timbers for crafting. That's unnecessary abuse. And if you were actually in the wilderness and relying on your knife, you would be more careful not to break and damage it, because it will cost you your life, or could. And that's what Nessmuk was talking about, a utility knife for processing game and processing vegetables, and a little bit of carving and cutting, making some skewers, things like that. And mine is actually a replication of the Nessmuk knife. It has a almost a Scandinavian grind. It's close to a flat grind, but they have a little bit of a convex taper here. But it's very rounded. It's perfect for slicing, and you can see it does not have a very big tip, because you shouldn't be crafting with it. You don't need a big tip for cutting meat and vegetables. It's dropped point, kind of like a Santaku, a chef knife. Big fat grip handle, very sharp, slightly softer steel, so you can sharpen and keep a good edge on it in the field, right, where you're going to be at camp. Now, the tool that's going to do the bulk of your work should be some sort of folder knife with multiple blades, preferably, at least 2. This one is an old timer, and I swear by this knife. It has 3 different style blades, which gives you options for depending on what you're trying to do. So you got sheep's foot, drop point, like a jackknife, and I don't remember the name of this one, but this is a rounded one. Really good for crafting. These are all very tapered, very, very sharp. These will do all of your small crafting stuff, like cutting notches and making spear points and peeling bark off and whatever you need to do. But again, you should be relying on your hatchet to the bulk of your work. A good hatchet you can choke up on and do all that, and it'll be a softer material, easily sharpened and maintained in the field. Now, your diddy bag should not be very large. You don't want it weighing you down when you're hiking and exploring. Too bulky, it just becomes annoying, and you want to take it off, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having your essentials with you at all times. If it's inconvenient and it's annoying, you're going to take it off, and then when you really need it, you're not going to have it. Now, you'd want to keep in here, some tinder, your small essential items, your essentials. And also, a good way to protect that is to have some sort of locking system. This one has a toggle, so when you're hiking, running, and stuff, it's not going to open up on you. But not so hard to open that you have to use both hands. A little flick of the fingers, you got it open. That's why I always go with leather too, guys. Leather is so durable and forgiving that it's irreplaceable, and it looks nice, Other possible options, if you don't like these ideas, a more well-rounded bushcrafting knife. This is the one I go to all the time. It's my Pathfinder knife, drop point, Scandinavian grind, big fat beefy handle. I prefer to carry mine horizontal. Pull it out, it's much easier to access. Another option, a little more modern, is a nice small folding saw for processing your bushcraft, harvesting small trees and small timbers and whatnot. And if you're not a fan of the small size hatchets like this one, you can go up to a larger size of a camp axe, which is, in between your normal size axe and a hatchet. This one's from the Swiss military. This used to be my go-to for a long time. As you can see, it's a bit rough. It's seen a lot of use. But this still should be your go-to for the bulk of your work. It's got a fat enough handle here to choke up for processing your wood, bushcrafting, but small enough to fit in the pack and do just about everything you need it to do. Close-up comparison of the two, so you can see how the shape of the blade is meant for slicing and cutting, as opposed to the flat one here, the very fine point for crafting. Both have a very fat spine, but this one is a 45-degree sharpened for your flint and steel and your ferro rods. This one's not so much. But they're both about the same size and length. You guys give me your opinions and your take on this whole idea. What 3 tools would be your main tools? It has to be a hatchet of some sort, single bit, double bit, flat, round, up to you, cooking, processing knife, and a utility knife, as in a folding knife. Tell me what 3 things you would use and why. Let me know.